Hi, and welcome to the Changes Ahead podcast.
Giving space to the often unheard questions,
Doubts,
hopes,
and challenges facing the church in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm Stephen.
And I'm Kathy, and we invite you to join us as we imagine the changes ahead.
It was so great to connect with some old friends and hear a bit more about their stories of what they've been up to. And one of the things I think for some context is Rui refers to the homes a few times, and what he's referring to there is an intentional community that the two of us were a part of, where we were trying to live and give priority to our immediate neighbours.
What I'm really enjoying is hearing people's stories and the perspectives that come out of their lived experience. And something that really resonated with me with Rui and Halee sharing is that people different to us can really teach us more about God. There's so much truth to this that cultural diversity helps us to see different sides of who God is. And it's no wonder I can't see clearly on my own. And it's both challenging and also inspiring.
Halee and Rui, it's so great to have you join us on the Changes Ahead podcast. Thank you so much for making some time, and we are so looking forward to hearing your thoughts and insights into what changes might be ahead of us in the church. So welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really good to be here, bro. Good to see you. Good to see your beautiful face again. You haven't aged a bit, Stephen.
Oh, that's kind. Very, very kind. Yes. We're looking for truth on this podcast, though. So.
Yeah. No. That's all truth, bro. You know me.
I wonder, as we begin, if you would be willing to just tell us a little bit about who you are. Who is Rui? Who is Halee?
I am Halee, and I am mostly a full-time mum. We've got 7, 5, and 3-year-olds. But I do work part-time. I have worked part-time for quite a while at Mariscal Baptist Church as the children's ministry worker. That involves running the children's program and coordinating the leaders. And I've recently started doing creative ministries, and there's a bunch of different things in the work that might come this year. Yeah, it's exciting.
Awesome, thank you.
I love sort of the Te Ao Māori way of starting. We open with a pepeka. Yeah, and so I'll go real quick. So ko Puketapapa te maunga, ko te auanga te awa, ko Pang toku tipunga, ko Manchuraua, ko Han Aku Iwi, Cross School South, ko Kainga, no China aho, ko Rui Peng toku ingoa. So Puketapapa or Roskell, Mount Roskell is our maunga. Te auanga is our awa, the local Oakley Creek that goes from here all the way out to this goes all the way out to central, all the way out to town, pretty close. So yeah, and I guess my whakapapa from my mum's side, so she's half mum's side is Manchurian Chinese and my dad's side is Han Chinese, and they historically didn't like each other. And what my mum told me a few years ago was that the Manchurians used to be like royalty in the Qing dynasty, and I was cracking up when she told me this, and I was like, this is amazing. We can raise. We need to raise some money for the business. Can we sell a part of our Forbidden Castle and just kind of go that way? Unfortunately, son, we don't do that, and instead we get to inherit a few generations of not being able to tell our stories, and government oppression basically. And that was an interesting part of the whakapapa, I guess. Yeah. So another big part of just being a dad and I have an amazing wife Halee that honestly I feel like half the time I don't know what I'm talking about, and she kind of brings it all in. And then we're fortunate enough to have 3 kids, Theo, Annabelle, and Malachi. And that's a big part of who I am and who we are. And besides that, I'm one of the co-founders at Critical, and it's a clean tech company, and our mission is to end plastic pollution by turning plastic waste into building materials. And so that's kind of between those two things is how I spend my time.
A busy life.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah, Stephen is actually Stephen's actually played quite a part of that story for me too. In our years and figuring all this community and faith and Christian stuff out in the homes, as well as Halee as well.
Well, Stephen Goldstone was one of my youth leaders when I was a teenager, when we came back from the mission field from Bangladesh. So
full circle, really.
That's right.
Yeah.
You mentioned the business, Rui. Perhaps we could start there. Clean tech company, your faith and worldview drives that. is my understanding. So how does the church impact, or faith impact, the way that you see business, and also vice versa? How does the fact that you're doing this clean tech, wanting to end pollution, plastic pollution, how does that then speak back into kind of the faith perspective?
That's a really it's a really tough question and a big question. It's a great question too. And I feel like it's definitely been a bit of a whānau affair for us. Like it's sort of like, since we got married, it's been a decision, Halee and I knew that when we got married, well, I hope we both knew and we're on the same page, that we make decisions based on our values and going after the things that are important. Yeah, like I really like the Māori whakatuki that's like hei maunga teitei, which is like reach beyond, and if you bow your head, let it be to a lofty mountain. Strive for the things of great value. If you bow your head, let it be to a lofty mountain. It's definitely a decision we've all made, and it's sort of a journey that we've all decided to be on post the end of the homes. And yeah, but I guess with Critical, like a lot of it came out of our time experimenting in the community homes, and Stephen would have known this. Yeah, having these, trying to figure out like what does faith look like beyond a rhythm or that we gather every Sunday, and beyond that, but what does it look like in our day-to-day life? And I can't talk about Critical without sort of talking about that, I guess. And so yeah, maybe like as a young 20-year-old going into this community thinking, oh man, I'm gonna like change the world, go into this place, I'm gonna help all these people, 6 months in, slap to the face, realizing just how broken I was and how much in need of belonging and friendship that I was. And it was sort of this journey of mutual belonging. And eventually what happened was what really broke our neighbor's heart, because they were our good friends, broke my heart. And there was this initial desire to go, well, how do we just keep seeing sort of this thing about, people needing access to opportunity, long-term opportunity, meaningful work, and in a place that matters. And we wanted to respond to that. So it wasn't, there was no intention about this being a business in the first half. It was just about how do we respond to the needs of our neighbors at the time, and then eventually grew into sort of a clean tech company. And how would you like frame that up, Halee?
His thought process was, I want to help people, but if their basic needs aren't being met, then there's no space for personal or spiritual growth. And so the people that we were working with, we were wanting to work with, didn't have jobs or didn't have like a steady income. And so the idea is that you create a business that can then, once it's steady enough to support itself and hire people, then you can choose to hire people who struggle to get a job and provide social support around that to make it possible for them. And obviously at the moment, Rui's business is really at the very beginning stage of that, but that's kind of the end goal.
I just love what I'm hearing, and we talk about this a lot in our community, and that what we do outside of our church life is we're just embodying who we are. We just take that with us. We're not trying to be anything different. And so your early experiences have shaped you and shaped your values and shaped this deep compassion, because you're living alongside people. And so you've just taken that, embodying that, and then living out of that. I mean, that just feels something that we can all do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's not easy, but
yeah.
There's a lot of faith involved in telling you. There's a lot of faith in like not backing down when you don't know how things are going to work out.
Well, yeah, and that's stepping into that unknown, isn't it? Right. So, and isn't that creative space? I think you would know a lot about that, Rui, when you're thinking about your business. That creativity doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means stepping out into that space of not knowing. And maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, like I think right now for us, it's like we in the last couple of years we raised about 350K, and we started the factory, and then we've earlier this year raised about another 125 grand. But when you're hiring people and staff, there's always this sense of uncertainty, and there's a lot of self-doubt in that journey. Like from the outside, it seems like like the story that you guys have actually caught me in quite a vulnerable time where there's this consistent uncertainty, like what's going to be next for us? What does the next season look like? How do we get customers? How do we develop this technology in this process about running out of money? So, but then again, I look back, just countless unexplainable like times where we've made the decision. I think for like for most of our 20s, because of the decision we made, we probably like lived off for 3 kids like off like 25 to 30 grand a year
in Auckland.
There'll be sort of also periods where it's like, holy shit, we're not going to have money to like pay the rent, or how are we going to buy, like have expenses to go through the summer holidays and stuff. And something which has happened, and I
feel like several times, like that's what I was meaning, that it takes faith. Like for us, it's been a faith journey of like trusting God with our finances, and there has been times when it's been like, well, next week we won't be able to pay rent if we don't get it from somewhere. And every single time, like something has come up, either like a random contract that we didn't know about or we thought was a long shot, or even just like anonymous lumps of money appearing in our bank account, like not kidding you, and or like things that seemed like a bad thing at the time turning out to actually save us financially. Like last year there was a tornado that hit Rui's factory just as he was
finished setting it up,
he had finished setting it up. And we thought, oh no, like we're gonna have to keep on paying rent. For like, had it not happened, we'd have to keep on paying rent. But little did we know that a machine that Rui had bought didn't work.
So we pretty much put at that time 350k to set up that first factory, because all of the technology and the process is all new or hasn't been developed. Literally the day after, we had this big Papatui tornado, half ripped everything out on half the roof and destroyed everything, pretty much destroyed everything, just about. And I think the tornado ripped through by 8:15. We were on site 8:30 for a meeting with one of the engineers.
Wow.
And it was devastating. And at the time, it felt like it broke my spirit quite a lot. But in hindsight, like what we didn't know was that like one of the machines that we bought that required for us to do a lot of the processing, it was a bit of a dud. It didn't do what was promised it to do, and basically costed more money. And in that 6-month period in the recovery,
where they didn't have to pay rent because the factory was broken,
the landlord gave us rent free for that period of time. So we then had to use the money to be able to repair the machines. Oh man, it's just, I feel like just countless part
had they had to pay rent without being able to manufacture, it would have stopped. Like we wouldn't have been able to carry on. But because of the tornado stopping the rent for the factory,
I feel like this isn't the story that like Kathy and Stephen wants to hear.
But it is interesting though, because also I suppose my question would be, who helps hold you in that space? Because even though you're talking about business, this is still the same feeling in any context, this idea of this feeling of uncertainty and not knowing what's ahead. What helps hold you? Are there people that hold you in that space when you're going through these? I mean, yes. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think, Halee obviously is a huge part of that, and being able to process and talk about it and then go, okay, what do we do next? Yeah, I think a community do hold that. Like I catch up with, in this period, I caught up with Ron Lang, who's my spiritual director, and we process, and there was just some pretty crazy, I don't even know how to describe it, just like in one of these sort of like a really uncertain period, I had this like vivid dream, and that I had to process that with with Ron and one of the spiritual directors. Like the feelings were that we're embarking on this journey in a half-baked vessel, but when we arrive at our destination of all of my kids, we just went into this room within a room. It's really hard to explain.
The path slowly unveiled itself, and it became like it was uncertain, and it became more certain, and then like amazing.
And I guess like one of the things I'm like I have to tell myself is that like life can be viewed in two ways. I think Rob Bell talks about this quite a bit. He says like the first one is that life is a set of occurrences that you have to endure, or life is an adventure that you get to go on. And like sort of I part that with like this other sort of reflection, which goes like, what is the difference? Like the only difference between being an entrepreneur and being unemployed is your attitude. And there's a lot of that I guess I can empathize and sympathize with over the years. Yeah, just things happen, having good friends and good mates that I can process with. But probably most recently is yeah, like our business got accepted into this accelerator called StartMate, and they 466 startups from Aussie and New Zealand apply, and they only choose 15. And from that, sort of I met other people, other entrepreneurs who's got similar journeys of trying to start something themselves and stepping into the unknown and taking these huge financial risks and stuff. I found that as another community of support. It's just people who are doing it themselves, who understands all the highs and lows. But yeah, it's people. Like
it's people. Yeah.
People and rhythms. I think rhythms. So like Pray As You Go is quite a cool ritual I have when I drive into work in the morning. And then as I come back, I find sort of like the headspace, mindfulness meditations are quite helpful to just sort of like split between this is work and this is home. And yeah, I don't do it well still, but it's the work in progress.
Thank you for your vulnerability, like sharing that with us. And yeah, it's really humbling actually, just sit with you in this space and hearing that. And
the question you had, Stephen, was how does this relate to faith?
Yeah.
Right. So I think to try and kind of circle it back in, I think what often sits or leaves me in my heart is like God leads you from the known into the unknown. Like that. Yeah. I feel like that's probably one of those things that I've kept in. And also that like life isn't made to be comfortable. Like it's made to be uncomfortable. God gives you peace in those spaces. So I think there's kind of these maybe nuggets of wisdom through the years that I've made that we've probably internalized ourselves. I think was it Frederick Buechner where he talks about like the work of our lives or the kaupapa or the purpose of our lives is where our deepest desire, the things that gives us the deepest joy, meet the world's deepest hunger. And I think that alongside those other nuggets, almost in my early 20s, kind of maybe in some ways like springboarded these decisions that we're making, that we're trying to make and still trying to make and still struggling with, to be honest. Yeah.
And Halee, you've mentioned you're working in a church context, particularly focusing on children, but with a slightly broader focus than that as well. You're going on this journey together as a family that's obviously really intense and uncertain. And how does your work with other families and children within a more traditional church space feed into this experience together?
So I grew up in church. My dad I'm a pastor's kid and a mish kid and all of those kinds of things. So
you're still in the church. You must be pretty unique.
Rui and I come from very different backgrounds. So it has been like quite a thing to kind of find what our priorities and what balls we should drop and shouldn't drop. I have in my family, what I watched was that my dad's family, they grew up Christian and went to church, and all of his siblings, he's one of 5, all of the siblings that didn't stay in church, none of my cousins of those aunties and uncles, they don't know God anymore. And so for us, as soon as we had kids, because before then we were a bit do we need to go to church? I don't know. We have our Christian friends and we have our Christian get-togethers and we talk about God and all of that. But as soon as we had kids, I was I want my kids to know God. And from my past, what I've seen is that kids who don't make connections at church don't know God. So we have been going to church. That being said, church is definitely not perfect at all. I firmly believe that you're going to bump into people that you highly disagree with, and I feel like the right attitude is it's okay to disagree, and maybe you will learn something from them because they have such a different worldview than you. So that's kind of been our you know what, we do need to stick with people even if they're annoying or let us down or aren't as compassionate or Christian as we think.
I'm also wondering about, is I don't know what you think about this, Halee, but is the place for tradition, in order for you to deconstruct, you need to have something to deconstruct? to start with. You know, I wonder if like, is there still a place for tradition, an imperfect tradition, where as our kids grow up and form their own perspectives and views, at least they have, you know, some kind of like a whakapapa or like a tūranga waiwai, which is like the Māori word for a place to stand. If you want to move the boulder, you need a lever and a place to stand. And I wonder if like there is room, you know, for what this imperfect church to be that place to stand upon that lever can then push the boulder off.
You know, with that, I agree with you that there needs to be that formation, but also being able to hold the place of being able to be curious and unpack things at the same time. And so I think we haven't done that part very well. We have focused on the formation, but not on the safety of being able to say, oh, well, I'm not sure about that, and to ask why. And so what do you think about that? Where is that place of curiosity and being able to have some questions and to not know?
I really think that is like one of the most important things that we can do, is to doubt and question. In your faith journey, it is kind of like a dance.
I like that.
Yeah, so you will draw closer to God, and you'll come back and you'll draw, and you'll walk alongside with them, and you hear God as a form of like music that makes you move in a certain way. And it's, you know, like there's pulses, and sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's fast, but like honestly, like doubt and questions and all of that kind of stuff is so important. And like to have those questions not shoved into the corner. Like I was very lucky as a teenager to have the parents that I did, because we always talked about different things, and like there was no question that we weren't allowed to ask.
It's also asking ourselves, like, what is the God that we believe in? Like when we feel like we can't ask certain questions, or we feel like we have to defend ourselves in that place. So I don't come from a faith background, and often like what's really important for me is for things to be accessible. Like it's for faith to be accessible, and what we do and how we share about it, how we talk about it. I think 2 weeks ago, it took Paul Windsor, like he did this sermon about cultural diversity isn't a nice to have, but having the truth interpreted by people of other cultures and backgrounds, even per se religious backgrounds as well, it helps us to understand all sides of who God is. And I just think that like if we don't step beyond and have genuine conversations with our Muslim and our Buddhist brothers and sisters and stuff, because we feel like, well, if I do that, then my faith is at risk. Well, heck, like your faith isn't that strong to start with anyway. And one of the biggest things I often sort of wonder is like, man, what can Te Ao Māori teach me more about God? Like what can what can this group of atheists teach me more about God?
Listening to the different voices that we don't normally hear, I think, to be honest, I'm a pastor, and the majority of books, and I'm trying to change this, but the majority of books, certainly up until the last few years ago, would have been a particular kind of person writing. That's going to be someone of European descent and most likely a man. And so hearing from different voices, as you suggested, sounds really important. So can we talk a little bit about that and how that might change things for us in the church?
I can probably tell a story. So I was really fortunate in the towards the end of last year, for about 2 or 3 months, to help to do this piece of work. So it was meant to be like the National Certificate of Sustainability. It was meant to be like a 101, Sustainability 101, looking at issues of climate change and decarbonized economies. And I was working with a good colleague of mine, Simon, looking at integrating Te Ao Māori principles into what's going to be a national and potentially a global sustainability course. And so like there was just so many sort of lessons in that space where like in Te Ao Māori, like your whakapapa, your tracing back of genealogy to your ancestors, but also to the land that your ancestors have grew up in, connecting that with this worldview of Māori. Like, yeah, like, I mean, in Te Ao Māori, like you believe that everything has a Māori, and Māori is understood as an intangible sort of force that binds things that don't typically bind together, that binds you and I together. But the Māori is also in the land, the ground that we stand on, the trees that's a part of us, the animals that are part of us. And because we're we're binded in that way, it creates a kinship tie. It's just like, it's ridiculous how innately what like in Mātauranga Māori can understand the Holy Spirit and how like it's so embedded in that. And because of that, because we have such, we all have kinship ties to the ground. Whatever we do to the land, like if the land is not healthy, then we are not healthy because we depend on that as we grow. And then and you take like a macro view and you look at like climate change, you look at sort of like the we're not really on track to hitting 1.5 degrees. A lot of these indigenous views on how we treat each other and treat the land, it's so like God-full. Like I find, traditionally probably I've come a lot more disconnected. I don't see things in that way, but through my brothers and sisters who are Māori, who may or may not be Christian themselves, my mate certainly that I'm working on this isn't, but a lot of how he sees the world and how he breathes and how he treats others, like it's teaching me more about God than I thought, than what I could understand. And so like in the Western Church have like a history in colonization, and colonization is often, and sort of like put it really crudely, is that like we have a better way than you, and our religion, like over centuries have been embedded the states, and so we carry that as part of our DNA, and so so when we come into a place, we get defensive, or someone have a different
we just want
view.
to change everything.
Like
no, that's stupid.
So you're describing again that we think we've got the right way and ours is better, rather than this understanding that you've got something to teach me. And we need that reciprocal mentoring going both ways. So that's why I think that stance or heart of humility is so important, because how can we learn of someone else until I am prepared to sit in that space myself and be open to what you have to reveal to me?
And I'm borrowing this is not my words, but it's a beautiful tension. It's our ability to hold that tension and interpret it how you want, like whether if it's like I love this I don't know where I heard this reflection that you have fundamentalists on both sides. You've got like really conservative fundamentalists, but then you've got these like super radical fundamentalists all the way on the other side where you can't box me or you can't, and they want to be so different. I think it's also just about like our ability to hold that tension, hold the tension between comfort and discomfort, hold the tension between like acknowledging our colonial past and stepping into the future in partnership with Māori, with other cultures. I think holding the tension is probably another quite a big theme.
So maybe as we wrap up our time, what's a step that our listeners could take away from some of the thoughts that you have shared with us?
I think it's pretty simple, and everyone has access to this. Like in your workplace, in your place of community. For me, it will just be like, who are the people that I've been avoiding and why? And to reach out and hang out, like
right. You could just say, like, as a act, go outside of your comfort zone, whether that's talking to someone who's got different ideologies to you.
I also think it's also like all organizations, I know that all businesses, but all businesses, because of the Treaty of Waitangi, have obligations to partner and understand Te Ao Māori and what we do. And I think that's huge. And I actually think that it's a huge opportunity to help with a lot of these things that make us uncomfortable, like these little barriers. Like I actually think there's a huge opportunity to, maybe it's about bridging partnerships to local iwi and doing things together and let them teach us what are the Te Ao Māori principles that we can integrate. And you might find that we start a session of a karakia, opening karakia or closing karakia, and starting a session with like a bit of whakawhanaungatanga, understanding who each one of us are, and see each other more than just kind of people next to us, but we have shared history, and we might have shared whakapapa. And I think that's a huge. I think it's a huge thing for our church to be. It's a huge opportunity for our church to be an amazing example of that, as an organisation that partner of Māori and partner of iwi, and practice, and practice Te Ao Māori and our faith and stuff. And we actually have an obligation.
We do. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you, guys. Those are really good things to end with. Great questions. I love that. Who are the people that you've been avoiding and why? And I like yours too, Halee, about going outside our comfort zone. And I think that's it, isn't it? That's the challenge is, can we just step out, even just a small step outside our comfort zone and allow ourselves to sit in that space?
Mm.
So thank you. I've really appreciated what you've brought to us.
I love the diversity of responses just from the two of you, just coming from really different perspectives. And that is a gift both of you have brought to us. So thank you for your willingness to share with us. And, I want to acknowledge your vulnerability at the beginning, Rui, as well. Yeah, acknowledging the space that you're sitting in as we're recording this. So thank you. We are incredibly grateful.
It's always good. Heaps of fun. Good to see you guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Changes Ahead podcast.
If that resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you.
So get in touch on Instagram and Facebook @ChangesAheadCast or Twitter @AheadChanges. See you next time.